on whatever computer I had, and then I was throwing the book away because nobody would want to pay for them, right? And I was a stay-at-home homeschooling mom in 2011 when my husband lost his job. And as he lost his job, I said, I found a book on indie publishing. At the time, I thought indie was short for Indian writing. So I thought I was doing the wrong thing for about a year indie publishing by putting my books on these sites. But when I read the book, I realized, hey, I've got a book on my computer, I'm gonna try it. So I made the world's ugliest cover. I did 3 passes of editing on my own, and I'm a clean writer, so that wasn't as terrible as it could have been. And I published the book on Smashwords only, because that's the only indie place I knew about, even though I wasn't really indie because that's short for Indian. And it took me 2 weeks to get my first sale. And I cried for hours when I got that first sale, because it meant somebody thought that something that I made up in my head was good enough to pay money for. I charged $1.99 because I didn't know that was a bad price point. I knew nothing. But I published that one book, I got 1 sale, and the way it made me feel was the same way I felt for my first $5,000 day. I mean, the feelings were so similar. So 18 months after that first book came out, my husband quit his job because I was making more in a month than he'd ever made in a day. More in a month than he'd ever made in a year. So I have been a full-time writer ever since. I've been in the 6-figure club ever since, and very, very happy with my life. So I write, as we've been talking about, I write romance primarily. I have 210 books out right now. Wow. And all but 5 are romance. I tried women's fiction for 5 books and said, this isn't for me. And I went back to romance. What I want to talk about is multi-author projects. And I have, again, lost my notes, so give me just a second here. Okay. First of all, I want to start with what is a multi-author project. A lot of people think there are only anthologies, or you can co-write, or you can do a round table book. What I'm going to talk about is a different type of project. And it's a project where everybody is writing in the same series, but they're publishing their own books into it. This way, no money is exchanging hands. I don't have to give all my friends 1099s, which is really a nice thing. I came up with an idea for a multi-author project in 2015, in May. And I decided, you know what? I was doing really well with mail order brides, and I still do really well with mail order brides. But I thought, if we send a mail order bride to every state, imagine that's a 50-book series. That would make some serious money. But I didn't want to commit to 50 books in one series. So I started gathering my friends together. And I started with just 2 friends who were going to run the project with me, which is great, because with a project that big, it can't be just one person in charge. You will die. And the 3 of us did it together. I see at least 2 people in here that were part of that 50 mail order bride series. We called it AMOB, for American Mail Order Brides. And everybody took 1, a few people took 2, I did 2 books in it. And we released 1 book a day for 50 days, right around Christmas time. And we were written up in USA Today. All this stuff happened because I came up with this crazy idea that I didn't think would ever work, but I decided it had to. And everybody wrote their own book, everybody published their own book, so everybody kept all their own royalties, and I wrote no 1099s. Okay, So for a minute, I'm gonna talk about anthologies and when they're good. So I think if you wanna shoot for a list with a bunch of your friends, that's one way to do it. But you've all got to have the same goal and the same motivation. I just did an anthology where somebody came to me and she said, I wanna do a charity anthology so that we can help people, help this organization who gives money to couples who are trying to adopt special needs kids. I have a special needs kid, I'm in 100%, what can I do? So I wrote a story for that, but then I find out a week later that everybody else wants to do a list run. Well, I'm the not best author, but I'm the highest paid author in the group, so I'm the most well-known, and everybody's like, let's do this. And I'm like, all right. I've already got USA Today bestseller, I don't care. I mean, I can have 10 books on the list, and it's just not as important to me as it once was. So I'm like, okay, nobody knew what they were doing, so everybody's like, well, we need to do this, and this, and this. No, that's all stupid. But they all insisted. We did not hit a list. I knew we wouldn't when they started throwing these ideas out there. My point is, have the same goal when you start. If you've got people that are like me and you're just there to help an organization, you're not going to be shooting for the highs. I just want the book to do great overall so we can help some of those European kids who are in sanitariums get into a loving home. That's my whole goal. Another thing you need to worry about with anthologies is everybody have the same heat level. And I'm mainly talking romance when I say heat level. So, but it also fits with others because the same level of cussing. I'm sorry, the worst word I'm gonna use in a book is probably asshat. And if you're using the F word, my readers are going to be so offended that they will quit reading me, they will never read you again, and they're done with you. So that's something you really need to take care of up front. What kind of language are we gonna use? How much graphic violence is going to be described? I write Western romance primarily. So everybody thinks that there needs to be a shootout and all this stuff. I don't write that crap. I like softer books. I don't like violence. So I don't put them in my books. But if you do, that's great. Find somebody else who is putting violence in your books, in their books to write with. You just can't write with me. If somebody is going to be writing with me, we usually are gonna say, let's go sweet, or just a tiny bit over the line. I'm a tiny bit over the line, barely. But people who wanna throw goats into a threesome need to find somebody else to write with. End of story. I'm not playing that game. Okay, so I'm moving on to co-writing. What I mean by co-writing is two people writing the same book together. A lot of times one person will do the vast majority of the writing and somebody else will just go in and fill in some details here and there, and then that person will do all the marketing. However you want to do it is fine, but it's between you and one other person, and the two of you decide together what your parameters are, and you write that book. When you want to tell the same story, it's a really good idea to write with somebody who writes like you do. And sometimes you'll have somebody with skills and somebody else that doesn't have the same thing. So I don't put a lot of description in my books. I don't like to read description. I skip over it when I read. So I'm not gonna put it in there and make my readers skip over it. But if I wanted to write something in a sci-fi genre or a fantasy genre, I would need to be having all that detail. So if I got with a fantasy author and said, okay, I'll write the story, you fill in the detail, then we would be a good set. But there again, money is exchanging hands. somebody is sending somebody else a 1099 every year, and I'm not against 1099s, I send out a couple every year. I just don't enjoy them. Okay, so a round table. And I didn't know this existed. The last couple of classes I've taught on this subject, people have thrown out a new idea to me for multi-author projects, where they sit in a circle and kind of do a D&D type game, but everybody's telling part of the story. And I think it's just bizarre and would never work, but these people swear by them, so I felt like I needed to at least include it and say, hey, people do this. And at the end, somebody's recording it the whole time and somebody types it up, and then they split money. And it makes no sense to me, but there you have it, that's what I know. I would not do it. Okay, so now we're going into the writing the series together, and this is what I specialize in. I have probably done 20 multi-author projects like this. I have only not been the lead on 2 of them, and they didn't go so well. I am very much if you're gonna work with me, you're gonna take orders from me, because I'm more of a control freak than I ever realized before I started writing. But yeah, I'm gonna set the parameters, and if you don't like them, find another project. And that may sound really rude, but somebody has to be in charge. And if there's nobody in charge, there's nobody for people to complain about each other to. Okay, so in what I'm talking about, everybody's publishing their own, and you're using a shared world. So I'll go back to the 50 mail order brides. I wrote a prologue for the 50 mail order brides, and then everybody chose a state, and they sprang off from my prologue. My prologue is a bunch of women working in a factory, and it burns down. So they're not gonna rebuild it, so these 50 women are out of jobs. So then I took it to another series I'm in, and took the matchmaker from that series and said, if you wanna use my matchmaker, you can, but it's better if everybody uses their own matchmaker if they've got a series like this, because then we're sharing worlds, and we're not just sharing this one series. And I don't know about anybody else in here, but I'm probably at least part of 50 or 60 series at this point. But all of my series connect. So if I wrote a book that took place in 1066 when William the Conqueror went into England, it connects to my contemporary books and every other historical I've ever written. And my readers look for those connections. So when people write with me, I always say, if you can tie it to your world in any way, do it. Because then we're sharing a world and not just this series. And people get really excited to find my links and how I link to other people. And another thing about those series is everybody either has to be KU or everybody has to be wide. It can't be one or the other. Well, it has to be one or the other. People can't just choose. So if I'm number 1 in a series and we do it KU, and I'm going to wide on everything, so that's not what I'm doing anymore. But if I'm number 1 and then number 2 is wide and number 3 is KU, people are getting every other book on Apple or Barnes & Noble. They've got to be the same. One of the most important things about it is choosing who to work with. If somebody is going to cause drama, they do not need to be in a group. Period, end of story. Can everybody hear me? I know I'm not real loud here. If they're going to say, well, my book is the best and yours sucked, they don't need to be in your project. If they are going to finish their book at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the day it's due, they don't need to be working with you. Period, end of story.
Thanks.
I call that the same level of urgency. So if other people are finishing their books way too late, I like to have, so Jo is writing in my series. I'm picking on her because she's in the front row and I know her.
Mhm.
So she's writing in my series. I want her book on my computer 2 weeks early, so I can read through for my characters and say, Kelsey doesn't call anybody dearie or sweetheart. Get that out. She only calls people by their names. So don't put that in there about my character. If you don't choose to look for your character in their book, that's on you. But you want to make sure that everybody's writing your characters the same way you're writing your characters, if that makes any sense at all. And you want to have similar heat levels. So we're back to language. Are we going to talk about alcohol in this book? I'm not a drinker. I never think to put alcohol in a book. Never. But a lot of people feel really strongly, well, everybody drinks a glass of wine with dinner, so it's got to be in every book. No, it doesn't. So some readers are going to be offended by alcohol in books. Some readers are not going to be offended by alcohol in books. I couldn't care less. I'm just allergic to the stuff, so I don't drink it. But so many people feel really strongly, so that's something you need to discuss. Language is something you need to discuss. I only write sex scenes within marriage. So that's a different level than somebody who will have a sex scene with this guy they met last week. Totally different heat levels. And I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong by writing differently than me. I'm just saying we're not gonna match unless you follow my rules.
And your readers won't cross over.
And my readers won't cross over. My readers get mad. I have seen my readers just go all out on somebody in reviews because somebody cussed in a book, and my readers don't do, and my characters don't do that. They were like, I don't know why she's writing with Kirsten. Kirsten must not have gotten to read this first. This is just wrong, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not wrong if that's what you were expecting. But if you're writing with me, my readers expect you to write like I do. You don't have to write everything like I do. I head hop. I'll admit it. I head hop all over the place. I'm proud of it. It is a choice, and I love it. I want to read writers who head hop. It's just what I like. But I don't, so Janelle's written with me, and I don't make Janelle head hop. But there are certain things that have to be the same throughout all the books, or people will get upset and angry. I need people who are able to hit their deadlines to work with me. And I seriously tell people, ask me. If you don't know if somebody who you know I've written with, how they work, ask me. So a friend recently said to me, yeah, I'm writing in so-and-so series. And I said, ask me next time. And she said, uh-oh. And I said, ask me next time. And I never told her what happened. But it's somebody who can't hit a deadline with a rock. Seriously, it's awful. And I can't work with people like that. And I know she can't either. So ask me. Seriously, I don't care if somebody sends me a friend request and a message, hey, I saw you worked with Janelle. Did she hit her deadlines? Did she do what she was supposed to do in that series? I'll give you a yes or a no. I won't explain why. I will tell you Janelle is a joy to work with.
I was gonna say, I hit my deadline. Just saying.
Yeah, she did. And you have to have somebody who's not going to try and take over your project. So she mentioned Rivers End Ranch before we started. In Rivers End Ranch, there were 5 of us who were writing together. And we decided to invite one more person. And this one more person is a delightful person. But she needed every detail on every building in every person 6 months in advance. I'm a pantser. I'm first in series. I will get you that book a month early, 2 months early, whatever you need. But do not ask me what my person is going to be wearing in the first scene of the book 6 months early. I have no clue. I got the book written a month in advance. By then, she'd already dropped out of the project because she needed more details than I could give her. Everybody else was like me. We were all pantsers. They're all like, yeah, you write it and we'll conform to your world. Perfect. We'll go from there. But this person, as wonderful as she was, could not write with us because she was such a plotter. And she wouldn't have been able to keep up with the every 10 weeks publication schedule either. It just didn't work for her. That doesn't mean we're bad, it doesn't mean she's bad, it just means that we didn't work out. And that's something you need to know before you start. So some of the advantages of this type of product, number one is bookkeeping. Don't make me send a 1099. Number two, you're keeping control over your own work. So I wrote this book in this series. If later I decide, you know what, I got a bunch of reviews saying that I shouldn't put this in there, I can go back and add that in later. It doesn't matter. But because nobody is in charge of it but me, I pushed publish, I can push unpublish. It's all me. Another advantage is you get to play with your friends. If you work with friends, which isn't always a great idea, but you get to play with your friends. And I like to do Zoom calls at least every other round. I prefer every round, because when I've had everybody coming at me with complaints about each other, and when I am just up to my ears in, you have published every book afternoon the day it was due since we started this project, I want to kill you. We have this Zoom call and I look at everybody and think, oh, she's my friend. And then I feel better about it and I can be their friend. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. You get so frustrated, and not everybody's in the same area. We all know that we're a global community. So I've got friends in other countries that I'm writing with, and seeing their face just makes it a special experience. I'm working with my friend. I've got a friend on the East Coast that I'm working with right now, and we're working on our third series together. And every time we talk, which is usually every round because we just enjoy blabbing at each other, I look at her and think, I'm writing with my friend, and get all excited, even though we talk almost daily. It's just silly. Another advantage to this is you can keep a rapid release schedule without dying. Who here has done rapid release? Okay. And everybody has a different idea of what they think of rapid release. To me, rapid release is every week or every other week. Some people think it's once every 3 months. So I like, when I'm in a project like this, to start the first round with weekly books. So I do one on Monday, somebody else does one the next Monday, somebody else the next Monday. So every other week, or every week you're getting a new book. The second round, we go to every other week. But that's still every 10 weeks, you're writing a new book for this series. How many other series do you have going? For me, it's always about 20. So I've got all these other books I've got to write too. So you've got to be cognizant of what your schedule is going to be like as you're getting into this, because it can be really overwhelming.
Can I ask, how long are these books?
They're usually 30 to 35,000. So shorter books, but they're books. Another big advantage to this is you're sharing your readers. So say Janelle and I have never had anybody read our same books. We're in the same genre, they do, we know this. But if we never had, I invite her to be in this project with me. And suddenly my readers are reading her books and her readers are reading my books. because they want the whole story and not just part of it. And you can do yours in a way that your whole world is centered around your people, but they're still gonna try the others in the series. And that's really beneficial if you're writing along the same lines. Some of the disadvantages, number one for me is losing friends. I have gotten to the point where I can't even look at a couple of my friends because they were just so terrible in deadlines. And I'm not. It makes me, my face turns red and I get furious with these people. And they're like, but I've got all this stuff going on in my life. We all do. So in the middle of the Rivers End Ranch series, I knew my husband was about to go in the hospital. He was in heart failure. So I was like, well, if they do put him in the hospital, I'm probably gonna have to skip the next round, and I may have to skip the next one. We only had 2 rounds left. So I did have to skip the next round because the day my book was coming out is the day my husband died twice. And I'm sorry, it took me a few months before I could write again. He's alive now. But it took me months to be able to get back to where I could put my fingers on the keyboard and do the kind of work I've been doing. So it's something that you just have to know. Stuff happens to people. But if it's every single time, it's not your life being difficult, it's you being difficult. Your mismanagement of time is not a crisis, unless you turn it into one, and then I don't want to work with you anyway. A bad book makes the entire group look bad. So I was in a group project, and one of the girls there is all about writing diverse romance, which is usually about different races. My friend took it to mean writing about people who are handicapped in some way. So she'd have somebody with no leg or no arm, or they were blind, or they were deaf. But she writes about a different type of diversity. But people who like diverse romance know that they can follow her. And one person got their book done the afternoon it was due, again, so everybody didn't have a chance to read. And she wrote about an African American heroine. That's fine, except she wrote it all wrong. She did not get the person right. I'm sorry, if I'm writing a book about an African American heroine or hero, I'm finding a beta reader who is an African American who reads my books and saying, you tell me every word that I say wrong so I can fix it. Do not just put it up there because you don't know. If I'm writing about someone who's deaf, I want someone who's deaf to read it. You need to have somebody who has walked in those shoes to read your books if you're going out of your own comfort zone. There were people who quit reading the entire series after that, and there were people who quit writing the person who talked about diverse romance after that. She lost readers because somebody couldn't get their book done on time. It's something you have to think about. We all lost readers over it. There are differences in the way people work, which I've already mentioned. Some are plotters, some are pantsers. I can work with a plotter usually, but not somebody who has to plot as far in advance as the person I was talking about earlier. It's just not gonna work for me because I'm not gonna take time out of my schedule 6 months in advance to write a book. I mean, if everybody in the group needs it that early, I'll do it, no problem. But if it's just one person, I'm not gonna change my whole world for this one person. And maybe that's mean, but it's me. Another thing that I've run into with problems is you've got this series out, it's nice and cohesive, and people start pulling their books out. If you don't have it set in stone in advance, this book will always be part of this series, then they can pull them out. And that needs to be set up in advance. I've had a 12-book series, book 1 leaves, or no, not book 1 because that was me, but book 3 left and book 6 left. And then in the second round, those same books left again. And you're like, now we don't even have a cohesive series page because these people can't do what they said they're gonna do. So now, I'm actually going to a point where I will probably make people sign contracts saying that they will keep their books in the series forever. And I understand wanting to pull your book out and brand it for your own series. And I have, every book is connected to every other book. So, oh, this book really fits this series better, but I promised I'd leave it here, so I have to leave it here. You need to work with people who are going to keep their word on everything. And I'm sorry, I have a problem with people who don't keep their words anyway. And it just kind of irks me beyond you wouldn't believe when I get certain people in these projects because of the things they do. And they're looking out for number 1, which I get, but what about the other 6 of us? Yes.
So, what's their motivation for taking the books out of the series? I mean,
Because they've connected it to another series of theirs as well, so they want it to, so like, I have this huge 39-book series called Brides of Beckham. I put a Bob in every book because of Brides of Beckham. It was my first series that really hit. And I wrote a book in a Cowboys and Angels series, but it was a Brides of Beckham. I used my matchmaker, I had it follow my formula exactly. It is a Brides of Beckham book, but I won't take it out because I don't want to hurt everybody else in the series. That's me. I just won't do it. But I could easily pull it out and make it a Brides of Beckham and have a 40-book series instead of a 39-book series. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay. Yes?
Do you do any kind of buy-in? How do you coordinate like covers and stuff
So
like that?
we all use the same cover artist. And it's the cover artist I've been working with since 2013. If you're working with me, you're using my cover artist. She's got great rates, she's fabulous, but everybody uses the same cover artist. And then I go one step further and have everybody use a continuity editor. And I'd never even heard the term, I think we made it up. But we use a continuity editor. And that person goes through every book and makes sure that even the side characters are right. So like we had this crazy woman with blue hair and she would walk rabbits on a leash. And I wrote her with blue hair and then the next person wrote her with pink hair. And well, no, she's gotta keep the blue hair unless she's dyeing her hair every other week for the series. And I don't think that was happening. But the continuity editor is really good with little tiny details and she catches all that stuff. I typically pay a continuity editor about $25 per book so that she can get all the books in the series. Yeah.
How do you guys set up for a series that's, let's say, 10, 12, 16 books? As a group, how do you set up that overall theme for that series? Or is there an overall theme?
There is an overall theme. So what we tend to do, and I try to keep it to as few people as possible in this part of it. One person or 2 or 3, depending on how big the project is, are going to come up with the ideas for how the project will work. So that person creates the world. They create a lot of the side characters. Everything is done by that person. So like our overarching theme was getting to the point where the kids own the ranch. So we had a destination ranch. There were 6 children. And those 6 children were running the ranch while mom and dad were around in an RV somewhere. And they never knew where their parents were. But all of the books leading up to the point where they took over the ranch was one overarching theme, which we came up with together. But the world itself should be created by 1, possibly as many as 3 people, but that's it. Does that answer your question? Okay, ask again.
It's fine.
Okay, yes.
Just while we're kind of off on this, so how does promotion for such a thing take place?
So part of the promotion is everybody sends a newsletter, and it can go out day of. You make your own parameters, of course. I say everybody sends a newsletter that day, or if the person prefers, they can assign days when it'll go out. So I normally send a newsletter every Friday because I usually have a book a week, so there are enough to do that. But with a multi-author project, we have one that'll start again in January. And that one comes out on Thursdays. So every Thursday I'll send my newsletter instead of every Friday. People can bump their own book if they choose to. They don't have to. What I typically do, and you can even put it into the parameters, everybody's got to do a $100 ad on Facebook, stretched out over 5 days, whatever you want. I typically will boost my own book because I'm almost always first. And when it first comes out that first week, I let it get organic sales, and then I'll start bumping it on Facebook and on Amazon. I am the world's worst marketer. I'm gonna tell you that now. I'm making $250,000 a year off the seat of my pants, and I cannot run an ad to save my life. And I know that's crazy, but everything for me has been organic. And I wish I could go into better for that. Pamela Kelly can. She was in Rivers End Ranch with me, and she's taken off since. Like really taken off since, and she's a born marketer. I'm a born storyteller, and the marketing aspect of things is really hard for me. Yes?
One of the other things that we did was we always put the link for the next book in the back.
That's what I was just
of
going to ask,
each other's
there's back
books.
matter.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we made sure all of our back matter pointed to the next person in the series.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing contact information for the continuity editor? That sounds really awesome, and,
It depends on what you're writing, whether or not she'll do it.
okay,
The one I use is extremely Christian.
no, so she doesn't wanna read my stuff.
Okay.
Um,
Then I have another one that I'll share with you after class,
Okay,
and she's even cheaper.
thank you.
We pay her $5 a book, and she's thrilled because she's getting a free book and she's being paid $5. These are hyper readers that I use for these things, and it really does help.
Like super fans.
That's my mom.
Yeah, super fans. All of my fans are super fans at this point. I need to find some new ones that aren't super fans. It's crazy. Okay. Yes.
So you just do all of this with like a gentlewoman's agreement and a written contract?
Yes. Yes.
What if
And
somebody-
I'm starting with the written contracts because people have been pulling books out and I want to throw rocks at their heads. It's not okay. But go ahead.
So what if somebody just completely drops the ball and doesn't produce a book at all?
So I've seen that happen, and I can write a book in 3 days. I don't like writing a book in 3 days.
Yeah.
I've done it in 2. So if somebody comes to me Sunday saying, my book's not gonna be ready Monday, or Tuesday, give me 2 days. But I've been known to stay up all night until the book is done, and then I've got the book out.
Until
And
their book is done, or until you
I
write a
write
book from
my
scratch?
book, I write a book
In their
and-
place.
In place of theirs?
Yes, in place of theirs.
In 2 days.
And I've done it in 2 days. I'd really rather not do it in 2 days. It hurts, but I will if I have to. And that way we're not missing one. But like when my husband was going into the hospital, I told everybody, you know what, I'm gonna miss the next book. There's no chance I'm gonna be able to write it. Because at the time, I'm looking at him and thinking he's not gonna survive. And that's what all the doctors were telling us. So I said, you know what, I can't do the next one. So we just let all the readers know, hey, Kirsten's husband's going through some stuff, and we're gonna skip her next book, and then with the next one, it ended up being the last round, and they put me at the end, so that I didn't have to rush to get back to writing, because your mind is jello after going through what I went through. Yes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I barely started mine. Okay. I'm gonna throw some best practice. I can't even speak today. I'm gonna throw some best practice tips out there. Just quickly, you set a deadline for each book at least a week early, preferably 2, so everybody has a chance to at least search for their characters. Even if you don't have a chance to read the whole thing, which is definitely preferable, you want to search for your own characters and make sure they're not having your characters say or do something that's really bizarre to you. I do pre-orders for the first round always. Second round, it depends on the series and what you want to do. I actually prefer pre-orders for every round, but it's up to you. And that can change. I've seen it go really well both ways. But first round you want it, because what I do, if I know I'm gonna be doing this series 3 months out, I start teasing my fans about it. And this is gonna sound crazy, but it really, really works. I tell them I have a super secret, and I spell super S-O-O-P-E-R, and secret is S-E-E-K-R-I-T.
Oh my gosh.
And they know as soon as the word super secret appear, I'm in some new multi-author project that they're getting excited about. And I tease like that every few days for 2 months. And then I tell everybody else in the series to start teasing that way about a month out. And they're all doing it. And then 2 weeks before we release, we do a secret reveal party. And you do it in a Facebook group. Everybody's doing some sort of a prize. Some people are giving ebooks. I tend to give out a random bag of crap. And that's what I call it to my fans. I have these, yeah, they love it, seriously. I have these grocery store insulated bags that are like this, and I fill it full of swag with my name on it. So they're getting notebooks, they're getting pens, they're getting mugs, they're getting bowls with little spoons that match, all this stuff, and they love it. And they hear me say random bag of crap, these people will do anything for a random bag of crap. And I'm not kidding. But they love it. So during that party, everybody's giving out their prizes, and then at the very end, we've had excerpts in there from the books coming out. We've had all this stuff. We're sharing the covers. And then at the end, we have a link to the first book's pre-order. So they've got a call to action at the end of the party. They go click, and you get 90% of your pre-orders within an hour of that party closing for the first book. And then everybody else's link is in the back of that first one or second one, so you go on that way. And it works beautifully, seriously. Let's see, always Zoom, I already mentioned that. I like, and I feel really strongly about releasing the first round 1 week apart. So if you know there are gonna be 5 books in this series, and you know you cannot write 5 books in the 50 weeks that it's gonna be there, you bank some books, and you bank them fast. Because 1 week apart for the first one, and then I go to 2 weeks apart after the others, depending on how many people are involved. Some, I just go to 1 week apart and stay that way, but I really prefer to go to 2 for the next round. Yes.
What's a round? What do you mean by that?
Once every person has written 1 book, that's a round. So, Rivers End Branch, there were 5 of us. We each wrote a book, that was the first round. That makes sense? Okay.
How long do you keep going? Is this forever?
So I'm about to say that. Good question. What I like to do is either give, okay, everybody's gonna write 3 books in this series. Or say, we're all gonna write 4 books or whatever, and then we're gonna leave it open-ended. So Rivers End Branch was meant to be 20 books, and we ended with 64. Wow. And it's an odd number because I missed one. But 64 books. It went on for almost 2 years, and then we spun it off to another series. But people are like, would you write another Rivers End Branch? Still. And it's been 3 years. and they just love them, so we get asked a lot.
Does that 64 books include like, you had Christmas spin-offs? Does
Uh,
that include everything?
Not the little shorts that we did at Christmas. So everybody wanted to catch-ups on all these people, so we did Christmas catch-ups. And you would write every hero and heroine that you'd already written, them at Christmas and whatever they were doing, so then you've got a Christmas story, and people are catching up and seeing how many babies does so-and-so have, does this person have any babies, I want more babies, and it's romance, everybody wants everybody to have a dozen babies. So I tend to write a lot of triplets and quadruplets, it makes me don't reuse names, even in a long series. I had one person in Rivers End Branch who was setting up this guy Cooper. He was only in the background, but he was gonna be her hero. And somebody else who didn't even realize where they got the name from, took the name and made him a bad guy. So now she can't use Cooper, this guy she's been setting up for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the other person didn't do it deliberately. She was just like, oh, I like that name, I'll use it in a book. So you need a list of names kept, especially if it goes on more than 10 or 12 books. You want to know who is marrying whom. Period, end of story. If you don't, you're going to get confused. And I'm going to leave it at that unless there are more questions. And if you have them later and see me, grab me, I don't care. Yes?
Yeah, I've never heard of this kind of thing before. Is this peculiar to the romance field or to other
I think
genres
it's
too?
peculiar to romance.
I know it existed once in